going if you haven't yet understood the difference between life and me.
Gene had to say, it was on my dad's list of things to do, but the house thing first.
Well, you said that was an accident.
I lied. The house is alive. We're all gonna die.
Live, trying to convince Herbert West yet again that his corpse ride only has eyes for Dan. I'm David.
I'm Maddy.
And I'm Corey.
It's almost Valentine's Day, guys.
It is. It's in a few days.
Holiday.
What is love?
I don't know.
Well, I'm glad we're not getting into a conversation about how fake Valentine's Day is, and if you really love someone, you shouldn't feel obligated to buy them chocolates.
Amen.
Yeah.
Also, really good job at reining us in right before we went off topic. That was awesome.
So, the theme for this episode, just to cheer you two sad sacks up about romance and Valentine's Day,
All you other lonely people.
Well, you know, I look at all the lonely people. Anyway.
Oh. Beatles fan?
Horror films are usually kind of a modernized fairy tale, and what is a fairy tale without a prince or princess? It's nothing, David. It's nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I figured this week for Valentine's Day, as this episode will be hopefully playing on Valentine's Day, we'll talk about romance in horror, unrequited love, and the line between love and hate.
Kind of all of our movies have that unrequited love theme kind of running throughout the movies. We all have like basically characters that are either like pursuing kind of characters that have nothing to do with them, or trying to bring back like love that may have been lost to them. Love is a pretty terrifying thing, so it definitely makes for good horror material as far as just the irrationality of love too.
For sure. I think that a lot of horror movies get love and obsession sort of, if not mixed on purpose, they do it. I mean, all movies do it accidentally. That's why we have Matthew Broderick. No, not Matthew. That's why we have the dude. Who's the dude holding up the radio?
Oh,
John
John
Cusack.
Yeah. That's
America's
why we have
other Keanu Reeves.
Right. America's other Keanu Reeves. I can't believe I forgot that. But that's why we have him essentially stalking this girl to win her love. That's what movies, for some reason, think love is. It's obsession.
Well, you know, I kind of blame Sting in a way.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. Sting wrote some creepy songs.
Oh yeah, there's definitely like some really creepy police songs. I was kind of reading like an article about love and hate, as far as like it being irrational and leading to like heroic and evil tendencies. It's really kind of bizarre, just like how close love and hate can be, as far as even like I think like people that have had like brain scans, like if they see something that they hate, like similar parts of the brain that are parts associated with when they see something that they love actually will actually flare up and like show activity. It's pretty interesting.
Science just explained why every one of my relationships has ever ended. The same part of my brain firing a little bit differently.
I just pictured you holding some flowers, yelling, "I love you!" and punching them right in the face.
Actually, it's never been me doing the punching. It's always been the ladies. Oh, tragic me. A little bit back to the obsession thing. Romance in horror especially is a little bit difficult because it's almost always obsession, or it's sort of a damsel in distress thing. We're getting away from that now that the world's a little more progressive.
Yeah,
but
now that I don't have to pay for my dinner. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Now that I have to pay for my dinner.
Oh yeah. Now that you have to. Well, you don't necessarily have to. It's all about choice. That's what this whole thing is. It's choice. Mm-hmm. But you've got
choosing not to pay for my dinner.
Right, because I'm cheap. Wait, are we dating now? That was sudden.
Well, I don't know. I get love and hate confused.
Oh, don't we all? But yeah, you've got the Draculas. I don't think, and most vampire movies, subspecies as well, you have, I'm not going to say Radu. We're going to stick to Dracula, because Radu is an argument for another time.
Yeah, we'll stick to the moderately less famous vampire, Dracula.
Yeah, there you go. Well, less famous to me. But Dracula, I'm still not 100% convinced he was actually in love with Mina. Was it Mina, or am I getting that wrong?
Well, if you've
No,
read,
yeah, Mina Harker.
yeah,
Yeah.
if
Yeah,
you've
yeah,
read
Mina
the
Harker.
book, which I have dozens of
Oh,
times,
so
he
have I.
doesn't love anybody. He's a monster.
Yeah, so that completely ruins what I'm thinking.
I'm sorry.
For
no,
some
I mean,
reason, no, it's okay. For some reason, I had thought the book isn't really specific on whether or not he actually loves her, is just obsessed with having her.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
to me, it always felt like an obsession that maybe even he himself was mistaking for love.
I mean, Maddy might take up arms against this, but I mean, kind of like the vampire myth, like from what I understand of it, also is that you had these like kind of aristocratic people that really kind of, I mean, obviously like bled their, figuratively and also I guess maybe in some cases literally, but kind of bled their workforce, like their peasantry, being almost like parasites to them and like taking all their goods. And as far as like like just the feudal system, just kind of like being like parasites from that. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely kind of the case in Dracula where, and it's been such a long time since I've actually read the book, but as far as like what Maddy was saying, that of like him being a monster, he really is just kind of like this, almost like this parasite. While in the movie, I think they do try to humanize him more as like a character, and
Yeah.
I'm sure Maddy would hate that. She loves vampires. So.
I have a strong interest in them.
I do too, and I get that. The other thing I don't really think anybody considers when we're talking about vampires specifically is they're not human anymore. They're a completely different species. We have no idea if we feel love the same way another species does, or if another species even does feel love. Dogs may not love you. They may just want food, and they know you give it to them, so they're nice to you.
Oh man, that's a whole argument I don't want to get
Exactly.
into.
Exactly.
There's a million different types of vampires, and we can probably do a vampire episode in the future in which I bore you all and break down all the different types of mythology they are. But essentially, it's an evolving creature, and you can put whatever interpretation you can in their nature.
Mhm.
They're supposed to metaphorically represent the concerns of the time. During Stoker's era, it was the fear of sex, the Victorian and Edwardian era. But prior to that, it was the people were dying young in what we would probably define now as third world countries. They wanted to find an outside source that was controllable to blame for it. That's why they started digging up dead bodies and saying, "Oh, this is puffing up with blood. This must be the reason that all my family members are dying," and so on.
Yeah. Oh,
and so
look, there's
forth.
hair. Their hair's longer. Let's cut their head off.
Yeah.
Fingernails.
Yeah.
It's a reflection of people feeling powerless and there being this force that is more powerful than them, but that they have the ability to stop.
What's interesting with David's, I don't want to call it an argument. What's interesting with David's idea, though, is everything you just said. His sort of vampire as an allegory for class war is a constant through everything you just said. Like,
Yeah, it's like
that's
they're
I never
bleeding us
thought of
dry,
that.
even though they're dead, kind of a deal. It's like
But then you start getting into not just vampires, but all monsters and the nature of horror and fairy tales. It's all about fear when it gets down to it, and I think we're all terrified of love.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
It's
That's why I am single and happy because I just don't want to go through it again. But that's a whole nother tragic tale. Other than this obsession part of love and just taking it to an extreme, another way horror movies like to define love is the hero saving the damsel in distress. And in the last few years, they've been playing with that. They've been switching roles. And even in some of the movies we're talking about today, the women really hold their... In fact, I think all of these movies, except maybe Bride of Reanimator, the women are all pretty strong characters, especially considering the time period. In almost all these movies from Dracula, Frankenstein in the 30s and 40s up until...
the
you've
Hammer films.
Yeah, the Hammer stuff. You've got Return of the Living Dead 2, that kind of thing. It's the hero saving the damsel, or it's the damsel, in the case of Return of the Living Dead, it's the damsel giving in to the man that she loves, who's turned into a zombie, so she lets him eat her brains.
Let's start with the movie I picked for the evening, Nightlife from 1989.
This blood is beautiful. Really beautiful. The way it swirls and dances, its color and movement, shape and form, the way it shifts and moves. It's like some kind of intricate and delicate ballet.
David, you're losing it.
Yeah, I know.
Now, this isn't the other name by the exact same title that came out in 1989. This is the made-for-TV film with Miriam Dabalo, Ben Cross, and one of my personal favorite voice actors, Keith Sarabica. Are either of you familiar with the show Angel?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I actually just had a 45-minute conversation about Buffy and Angel with the guy at GameStop. And now I know who you're talking about. Holy shit, it's been driving me nuts who that dude was. Mind blown.
Keith Sarabica basically was in Angel as a time-traveling vampire hunter.
Yeah, and speaking of obsession, wow.
Now, he was also in Golden Years, a miniseries written by Stephen King that kind of ended on a flat note, but he's just an excellent actor. He has the best voice, and honestly, even though I love Ben Cross, who is basically playing Barnabas in this movie,
It really is.
Keith Sarabica is just so much cooler. As is Camille Saviola, who plays one of the best sidekicks of all time, the ass-kicking Spanish maid. Talk about empowering.
Oh, she was amazing.
Yeah, she was my favorite character.
She was the first one to pull a gun in the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say that as badass as she was, there was still a whole lot of the whole casual racism of the 80s still happening there. And I know they're in Mexico, so I can forgive a little bit of it. But you've got the Mexican grave diggers who may as well have had a mariachi band behind them as they were doing the graveyard. Well, grave robbers. I'm sorry, they were grave robbers. And they did a little bit of that with the maid too, but I think I could excuse a lot of that because, as I said, it's in Mexico. Although I'm sure it was produced by a bunch of white guys. And the fact that she's just so badass.
Well, this movie also features several other fantastic smaller character actors, including Oliver Clark, Jesse Cordy, and one of my favorites, Glenn Shadix, who is another fantastic voice actor. You may recognize him from Beetlejuice as Otto. He also voiced Oogie Boogie in Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2010.
Oh, man, this episode's going to be full of dead guys.
Oh, great. Isn't that what love's really about? So I think the lead actress in this, Miriam Diabo, is just absolutely stunning. Yeah. When I looked up films and things she'd been in, there were a lot of minor parts, television shows and stuff. But the funniest thing I found on her list wasn't just that she was in the movie Extra, which is an awful alien film, but there was actually a quote that said, "Miriam Diabo has awarded audiences with her beauty and presence for over 20 years." So,
and that is true. She definitely has. She's beautiful, and she definitely has a hell of a presence. I was pleasantly surprised at this movie. This reminded me that back in the day, there used to be fairly decent, although campy, made-for-TV movies a lot. I didn't have time to look up any other names, but there are a lot of really decent made-for-TV movies that came out in the late 70s through the 80s that are at least on par with this.
You know, even HBO, even though at the time when they were like a sort of fledgling channel, they were also coming up with some great kind of cheesy, made-for-TV looking films that are largely forgotten today.
Oh yeah, I could get us off topic with HBO original movies, but I won't do that.
We can probably talk about that in the future.
I don't know if this is the right place to say this, but I did a little bit of research because I was curious about the beginning of this movie. Mm-hmm. Especially about the museum full of dead fellas in the beginning. Did you look into that at all?
I've already been pretty aware of the sort of Mexican cemeteries as museums and tourist attractions. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I was completely unaware, so I looked it up. I Googled something ridiculous like Corpse Museum in Mexico or something, and I found this place. Well, I found these bodies that are called the mummies of Guanajuato. Mm-hmm. They're bodies that were dug up between 1870 and 1958 because the families couldn't afford, it was called a perpetual burial tax, which means you had to keep paying to keep your family in the ground. Mm-hmm. And if you didn't do that, they would dig up your family and put them in this room. Eventually, like tourists and locals got word of this and would come to see these corpses because the climate of the area actually does allow for a natural mummification there.
And I think the opening of the film, even the museum curator is actually describing that process.
Yeah, that's why I looked it out. That's why I looked it up, because I thought it was a bunch of crap, but it turns out to be very true. And it's still open. As of 2007, this place is displaying 59 out of 111 corpses.
You know, as morbid as this may seem, that's been a place I've probably wanted to go to since I was 10.
Oh, for sure. I would love to check that out too. Let's find a con down that way that'll send us there for free, and we'll go together.
Maybe in the future we can make plans to in the distant future we can actually all make plans to meet up there.
I'd be down with that. I've never been to Mexico.
Neither have
Sorry.
I. Insert racist joke. No, I'm just kidding. The last actor.
Sorry.
The last actor I'd like to focus on in this film is probably the one who's arguably the most famous of the crew of the cast, and that would be Ben Cross, who was in Dark Shadows, the 90s version, which we had actually briefly touched on Dark Shadows in the last episode.
I was going to say, how is the remake of Dark Shadows, the TV show, coming up so often?
I guess because Dark Shadows is awesome. I'm probably going to go on and on about Dan Curtis at some point. But Ben Cross played Barnabas in that, and essentially he kind of played Barnabas in this movie too. He balances posh and creepy very well.
Yeah, he does.
Basically, this movie is a very simple story. Vampire meets girl, vampire turns girl, girl doesn't like vampire, girl decides to bury herself alive, earthquake at a Mexican mummy museum wakes her up, and then she tries to live a new life in the modern world, falls in love with a doctor, vampire finds girl again, funny battle at the end, an absolutely laughable, awful final battle.
I will enjoy killing you slowly. Welcome to the beast. Holy hell.
And then everybody's happy.
Do you think Dr. Zuckerman, David Zuckerman, do you think that he loved her until, I don't want to give away the end like last week with Funny Games. Do you think that he was actually in love with her up until the last few minutes of the movie? Because I don't.
I think he fell for her. He was sympathetic towards her. He might even have had the Florence Nightingale syndrome, fell in love with his patient. Or he just thought she was super hot, and he was like, I can deal with this.
Yeah, I mean, I could buy that. I mean, one of the things I really liked about this movie is that it kind of combines science and mysticism, kind of like taking what if science or vampires were real.
And it does it kind of well, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's impressive, honestly. I think some people have even kind of stolen the idea that the element of the blood and why vampires drink blood from people as opposed to just from a bottle is because of the epinephrine, the fear, the adrenaline. And I just love that idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
They definitely pull it off better than Near Dark.
Near Dark, you have to willing severe suspension of disbelief. Hey, the music's great.
Oh, everything about Near Dark's great except for the end.
Look, Bill Paxton.
Lance Henriksen.
I mean, it's got a good. As far as like Diamondback and Jesse, that is a. I mean, you could have easily included Near Dark almost as like one of the movies that we discussed today. But
oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I adore Near Dark. I just feel like maybe I want to just focus on that in a Bill Paxton episode or something.
Movies like Near Dark deserve like a deep dive too. Like maybe we all just focus on something like that one day.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I do feel that this movie is horror comedy balanced right. It's not just lowbrow humor and boobs, which of course none of us would watch a movie like that. The jokes are cleverly placed. There's really fantastic acting. Saviola, the maid, like I said, she's the best sidekick ever.
I was just going to say the two sort of Renfield vampire characters, their final scenes are pretty awesome too.
They're just so bored.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love the I laughed out loud when the one of the goons is like stuck in one of the hospital rooms and like has the UV light booby trap all around him, and the janitor comes in and the goon tries to get him to shut off the light, and the janitor flips the wrong switch and blows him to pieces with the UV light, and he replies like,
I'm not cleaning it up.
I caught one more interesting thing in this movie. I mean, it's another one of those moments of me probably reading into things. way too much like I am wont to do. At one point, Vlad says, "To be diseased in this culture is to be a monster." I thought that reference or that quote was interesting because this is the late 80s. This is when
There's the height of the AIDS epidemic.
Yeah, we're sort of in the middle. Not just that, we're in the middle of AIDS hysteria. Things are starting to maybe slowly roll the other way, but I really feel like that line was put in there on purpose at that point.
Oh, I agree.
I think Angelique mentions hepatitis too in the beginning when she's going to donate blood, and I think like the person that she's talking to, the other donor, like he says like they don't check for it or something like that, which is
they almost
pretty
check.
Yeah, and they're all just totally casual about everything. I find it very interesting that every single person in this movie speaks English.
Well, again, that's a problem with a bunch of white guys producing a movie that takes place in Mexico. They're not going to get the culture right.
Well, it's Mexico City though, so
that's true too. That's a pretty, I don't want to say Americanized, but there's probably a lot of bilingual folks there.
Anyway, so that's Nightlife. I'd like to real quick play a clip of the most bizarre dream that pretty much only existed in this film as a joke.
Hey, give me a light.
I'll take a light. A blood light.
I feel like that moment reminded me of Twin Peaks a lot.
Kind of, yeah, but it was before Twin Peaks. I already inserted the clip, by the way, so probably before you said that.
Oh, that's fine. So you're actually living in two time periods right now?
I'm a time traveler, Corey.
I'm
I can see Scott Valentine at the beginning and end of his career all at once.
Take me with you. Take me with you.
I can show you such sights.
Alright, so I guess now it's time to move on to a slightly bigger budget film with some way over the top effects. David, take it away.
Alrighty. Yeah, so I have a Bride of Reanimator. Came out in 1990. The budget looks like it was estimated as like $2 million. How much was Nightlife? Do you happen to know that, Maddy?
$57.
Yeah, sounds about right. But yeah, definitely the biggest budget out of the three.
Oh yeah, definitely, no doubt. The budget for Nightlife was not listed on IMDb.
Okay.
It was filmed in Mexico City, though.
Okay.
So I was right about that.
Herbert West is not just your ordinary doctor.
Others dare not dream what we are about to do.
He intends to make medical history.
This is no longer about just reanimating the dead.
With the help of Daniel Kane.
It's never gonna work. She's gonna be uncontrollably spastic.
And a few select friends.
West took my body, but he cannot take my mind.
He's about to bring his dream to life.
And God created woman.
Someone old.
What's dead is dead.
Someone new.
It's some kind of joke, right, man?
How dare you judge my work?
Someone borrowed.
Who is she?
Someone blue.
This morbid doodling with human body parts. Is this what it's all about?
Something so shocking, it must be true.
There is my creation. Make a note of it, Dan! Rejects!
Daniel! You're coming! You made me.
I made you. Forget it, Dan. She's just an assembly of dead tissue.
H.P. Lovecraft's Reanimator 2.
Are we having fun yet?
So for the sequel to Reanimator, we have producer Brian Yuzna taking over the director's chair from original helmsman Stuart Gordon. And while Gordon would kind of branch off and do films in like other genres like Fortress, I don't know if you guys have seen that. It's got Christopher Lambert in it from Highlander. It's kind of like about prison.
I haven't seen that, but I love Chris Lambert.
But and he would go on to do like Space Truckers, Stuck, and others. But also doing like, of course, like movies in the horror genre such as Dagon, which I need to see, Castle Freak, and so on.
Dagon is so good.
Yeah, it seems like Brian Yuzna kind of just stuck to independent horror movies, and still does today, having his like directorial debut with 1989 Society, and with special effects done by the aptly named awesome Screaming Mad George. Would go on to collaborate with Yuzna as far as like many on many of his films, including Bride of Reanimator.
Now, on a side note, can you imagine if Jeffrey Combs and Ben Cross were in the same movie together?
Who would eat the most scenery?
Exactly.
You got like David Gale too, if he puts on like his Dr. Hill hammy performance as well. Yeah, this the sequel kind of continues like the original film's legacy of like gore and black humor, and kind of like strangely touching like horror, plenty of like lifts from like Lovecraft's original tales.
Yeah, this one was actually closer to the short story than the original, if I remember correctly. I mean, it's obviously a lot of liberties were still taken, but this one has more from the story than either of the other
absolutely.
movies.
Yeah, I mean, you have like I think like there's like two novellas, like the Horror from the Shadows segment, and then there's also another segment called like the Tomb Legions. And the Horror from the Shadows is like basically West, and it's kind of like an unnamed narrator. It's presumably Kane from the movies, but they're taking advantage of like the World War I trenches and carnage and mayhem to continue their experiments. And then the Tomb Legions basically kind of moves on to where West and the narrator are, running this house, which obviously like in the movie, it's connected to like this like catacombs and crypt where West kind of stores his neglected experiments.
It's kind of funny. It's like after the first movie, why the hell would Dan continue to work with West?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, it's the character of Dan. Like, I mean, as far as like wanting to bring back Meg from the original movie, who met her demise. I mean, that's really the only explanation I can come up with is that he wants to. He knows that like Wes is like the only one that can bring her back if possible.
I have a Dan theory about that.
Homoerotic
overtones. No, there actually no, there aren't.
You're just not trying hard enough.
I'll see what I can do. I'll come up with something later. Maybe while I'm talking, I'll find something. My theory about Dan is he doesn't actually love Meg. He doesn't love Francesca. He doesn't actually love Gloria. He's in love with being the hero. He's in love with saving the day. And I think that the reason, subconsciously or not, that he sticks with West is because he knows he's going to have to pull people out of danger more often than not beautiful women.
Yeah, he has a pretty shallow character.
Yeah, he does like move on from woman to woman after. I thought you were gonna go and like delve into like fan fiction territory and like bring up like the West.
I can if you want. There's a great fan fiction.
I'm sure there is.
No, please don't.
I'm not joking.
Oh no, I know you're not.
I mean, I'm sure like Lovecraft would have like an embolism at the very idea, but yeah, I mean they do kind of have like some implications and
it's all about the implication.
Yeah, so like the opening segment takes place 8 months after the events of Reanimator, and this time it's updated to like a civil war in Peru, and introduces both Bruce Abbott and his viciously 1980s Beach Boy hairdo and his character Kane's and love interest Italian journalist Francesca, played by Olivia Fabiana Udenio.
That is a very long name.
Whom most of y'all will know as the Bond parody girl, A Lot of Vagina and Austin Powers. After like the like a shootout from West. We're back in Miskatonic with both West and Kane now practicing at the hospital, which is somehow like forgotten, I guess, the horrifying events that transpired 8 months ago. I think they also like mentioned that they drop out of like medical school, but somehow they've become doctors apparently. Mm-hmm. So we have like Dr. West, played by the awesome Jeffrey Combs, discovering that he can boost this serum with like this, I guess like this amniotic fluid from a rare iguana, kind of like putting this serum on severed body parts allows them to like spring back to life. So a la Frankenstein, West is wanting to create new life with the help of the heart of like Dan Kane's lost love, Megan Halsey, which West pilfers from a hospital storeroom that is apparently keeping like the first film's now defunct reanimated body parts that have refused to decay, as
I
one
think
does.
Some of the best bits in this movie are just the scenes with West like experimenting, like just the ridiculousness of
yeah.
it.
yeah.
The things he makes are so wonderful.
It's just like, he's just screwing around at this point. He's not trying to learn anything.
No, and that's why I'd like to be a mad scientist someday. That's exactly what I would do.
So we have like West hoping to ensure Kane's help and friendship, persuading Dan that he can bring back his girlfriend Meg with the help of like stolen body parts, and we get some like really like specific body parts. We get like suicidal ballerina's feet, hooker's legs, virgin's womb, and to top it all off, like the head of Gloria, who's played by Kathleen, I think it's Kinmont, who's a terminal patient that Dan becomes attached to, and I guess like it reminds him of Meg.
Funny about that actress, because honestly, as a dying girl, and everything, as a normal person, she looks really weird. Her facial shape and proportions are bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
But it works once she's, done up and a walking corpse.
The scene you just mentioned about like, when you're describing where the feet came from and that stuff, that really shows how good Jeffrey Combs is as an actor. That whole monologue is so well done.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I watch it,
he's totally casual.
The first time.
He's the most casual sociopath on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, like the collection of body parts in storage at the hospital morgue also includes like the disembodied head of West's old antagonist, Dr. Hill.
Of course.
Who's played by the awesomely hammy David Gale, and is brought back to life by pathologist Dr. Graves, who's played by Stewart, when he experiments with a bottle of West's reagent. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Chapman, who's played by Claude Jones, whose wife is like actually one of the few remaining zombies from the first film, and is locked in the hospital's psychiatric ward, is suspicious of West and Kane and investigates and kind of gets the movie going. Mm-hmm. What eventually like kind of follows is basically just ensuing extreme special effects orgy, which one that would make like Haranas Bosch kind of blush or at least smile. The film's climax is really kind of crazy and brilliant, and it really kind of like gives like Screaming Mad George his name. It's also kind of like, I mean, it's heart wrenching. Of course, like Dan's kind of like rejection of his new bride is pretty heart wrenching.
I think this climax is right up there in awesomeness with movies like Society.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen Society.
Well, looks like you have a new homework assignment.
I'll write it down.
It's pretty great. The Bride of Reanimator is I don't know about how you guys feel, but it's a little bit less coherent as far as like plot wise than the first film.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of everywhere.
Yeah, but I mean, it's definitely like a great follow up to the original. I mean, as far as like a double feature, it's pretty excellent as far as like watching it right after the original Reanimator. Mm-hmm. But we can probably like insert the blasphemy quote here.
What have you done in here?
We created a life.
You made her?
Yes. Dead pieces of this. With my hands, I created what no man's mind or woman's womb could ever hope to achieve.
Blasphemy!
Blasphemy? Before what god? A god repulsed by the miserable humanity he created in his own image? I will not be shackled by the failures of your god. The only blasphemy is to wallow in insignificance. I have taken refuse in your god's failures, and I have triumphed. There is my creation.
Okay. It's inserted.
Good work, future girl. The third one is wrapped up in this neat package too, right? Beyond Reanimator actually takes off right after Bride of Reanimator, and then time skips a little bit later, if I remember correctly.
I need to watch Beyond Reanimator. Actually, I haven't seen it yet.
It's pretty great still. I mean, it's still Reanimator. I really liked it.
Yeah, it's 2003, so it's much later. I haven't
And there was
seen
supposed to be one more that we haven't gotten yet. It was supposed to be House of Reanimator, where the President of the United States dies.
Oh,
and West is called. Can you imagine if we did that now?
Now is the right right time for it. There could be
exactly.
Oh my gosh, that would be fantastic.
It's the movie Trump's American needs.
I love when a horror film can accurately reflect the satire or the fears of the time. It makes the best movies.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant. I mean, did you guys have any favorite scenes?
I have a question. My favorite scene is obviously the orgy of special effects and madness in the end when you see all of his creations rebel and Dan's pulling Francesca out and West is covered in the cave-in. Like, I love that scene.
It's a scene that has you yelling "Holy crap!" at the screen.
It's one of my all-time favorites, and I don't think it'll ever be topped. My question is, so we have Dan being in love with Meg. That's obviously not going well. He feels for this patient. She dies. Francesca, the only woman to survive the film, at the end, they're hugging, and they had obviously started a relationship. Do you think, David, that relationship went anywhere? Pretending Beyond Reanimator didn't exist, do you think that relationship could have gone anywhere?
Well, he's a doctor, so...
That explains everything.
The reason I ask is because Francesca and him have that budding relationship thing until
his
Gloria...
weird breakdown, suspension of reality.
And then we have Gloria's reanimated ballet foot corpse with Meg's heart rubbing up against him, and Francesca's down there watching this. She sees him completely break down and be like, I could make this work for a brief second, and then fast forward through all the chaos to the end, and they're hugging and embracing. I'm pretty sure after that hug, she's just like, dude, I'm out.
After the credits roll.
I'm trying to think of any world where that relationship continues, and after you see your recent lover with a corpse leg rubbing up and down on his up against a dirty basement laboratory wall, I think that's the end.
Well,
yeah, I mean,
this is why your relationships don't work out, Corey. You're not willing to overlook the little things.
You're right. I'm too picky, apparently.
I mean, that's definitely a good point. I mean, and you've kind of seen, like, Dan King kind of taking this, like, over the course of the movie further and further, kind of like a moral downward spiral. And kind of like, I mean, that's kind of the case in the novellas as well, is like this narrator just kind of goes along with Wes and almost like idolizes him as like a hero.
Yeah, I think he's mentally weak, and Wes uses that to his advantage. He sees that and he uses it.
Yeah, especially after the events of the first one. I think that's definitely the case with Dan and Herbert. Because we're cool, I can call them by their first names.
Danbert, the power couple.
Oh gosh, Danbert may be the worst shipping name I've ever heard.
Okay, so time for Corey's movie.
Bear with me on this. I think I might have gone a little bit crazy when I wrote this one. I don't think my write-up of this movie would have happened the way it did had Maddy and I not had this Cold War about subspecies. The movies don't relate, and the argument doesn't relate, but I think that the way I did this relates to the way I'm arguing for Radu.
Are you just going to be devil's advocate for every crazy movie you pick?
I'm not being devil's advocate. I truly believe the madness I say most of the time. All right. Die You Zombie Bastards, written by, I'm going to massacre this name, Heg DeMargian and Caleb Emerson.
Peanut.
Okay, let me start that again. I'm sorry. Die You Zombie Bastards, written by Heg DeMargian and Caleb Emerson, who also directs, is an epic, globe-spanning love story quest about two cannibal serial killers, Red and Violet. who, against incredible odds, find each other. Seriously, can you imagine how hard it would be to find another cannibal serial killer in this day and age? It's not often a Henry Lee Lucas finds their Otis O'Toole.
Well, not if you're in the Appalachians.
Oh, that's a good point. Speaking of the Appalachians, before I start in, I think Hansel Atkins, the grandfather of modern rockabilly and psychobilly, sums up this movie beautifully in his intro.
Hello out there, folks. My name is Hassel Agnes. Well, they call me Weasel, Hazel, and all that, but it's really Hassel. And I'm from Madison, West Virginia, so I'm going to talk backwards so you get messed up. This movie you're about to see is really strange. Why would you say, ha, ha, ha? Wow, baby!
This tells a story that you ain't never heard or seen or ever thought of. If you ever think of it, tell us. It's love, murder, and rubber water called it the same thing. Zombies, you know, zombie, bobby, choo-choo, cock-a-goo-goo. Hey, baby! This story is no good if you got a weak heart or a weak stomach or a weak TC. Figure that out. You know what that means? I can tell you. Chitties and cookies. You know, real chicken. Our stories begin on a weird, you know what that is? It ain't what you think. On a weird island way out where there ain't nothing. It's Hallow-Holics Island. Well, it's a little spot of ground and water all around you. That's what it is. Then one day, something real big happened. Real bad.
Anyway, in this beautiful tale of love against all odds, Violet is kidnapped by the evil mad scientist Baron Vaclav Mummyhead von Nefarious and taken to Hell Island to become his unwilling bride. Oh, shit. I'm sorry, I miswrote this. Red must then don the last gift his loving wife bestowed upon him, an outfit made of human skin, complete with cape and codpiece. In this, Red finally becomes the superhero he was meant to be.
Well, I definitely appreciate that it's described as a codpiece.
I wasn't sure how far you wanted me to take it. I figured if the readers, if the listeners want to, they can
infer.
Yeah. I actually think I made it through this whole thing without referencing anything other than codpiece. I think I'm pretty proud of myself.
I'm impressed because there was a lot of
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
So at the police station, when Red is trying to properly report his missing wife, he meets a mysterious cop played by adult film star Jamie Gillis, who sends him to find people who offer him items to help him on his quest, like Perseus's gifts from the gods. As Red finds these pocket characters, he's treated to their tales of woe. He must listen to the story of Coconut Head Face Man, who wears a coconut mask while leaping from trees to scare tropical islanders with a sharpened palm leaf. He must also hear the tale of Olaf the Cheese Demon, who steals all the cheese from the homes of disobedient children, heats it all up in a pot to torture his sleeping victims.
Specifically nubile young girls.
Yeah, specifically nubile young girls. At one point, he must train with the legendary rockabilly one-man band Hansel Atkins for his final battle with Nefarious, and finally, he must confront himself and the feelings he's had all his life for the man that abandoned him as a child.
That is a beautiful way to describe this film.
Yeah, I mean, Hansel Atkins says in the beginning, this is a strange movie, and God, is it strange.
Mm-hmm.
This was pretty epic, though. It was a pretty epic movie.
It really was. And it's an epic quest full of danger around every corner.
At times it reminded me of Power Rangers.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Because not only in his quest must he fight off those affected by Baron Zombatron's ray. Oh, wait. No, that's not what I meant at all.
Peanuts!
You must love editing my parts.
That's okay. I got a lot of editing to do all around, guys. You both. I'm sorry that was future me. That wasn't me, the me that's talking right now.
Oh, future me is so bitter.
I'm sorry, Maddy.
Not only must Red fight off those affected by Baron Zombatron Ray, a legion of undead warriors in purple jumpsuits that lurk around every corner, trying to stop him on his noble quest for the love he's lost, he must also battle temptation, as Red is the sexual desire of every woman he stumbles upon. The quest culminates in a final battle for the ages on Hell Island that must be seen to be believed.
Did you just read this synopsis off of the back of the DVD?
No, I did not just read this off of the back of the DVD cover. I actually wrote this because this is truly one of the most amazing love stories I've ever seen on film. These two people against all odds find each other, and then they're separated, and the love has to go on this insane quest fighting zombies and
Swedes,
all sorts of topless Swedes, just to get back to her. It's beautiful.
It was definitely low budget. Kind of reminds me of the weird public broadcasting movies you'd stumble on back in the 90s.
Yeah, you're right. That's a little bit cold, but you're right. The movie cost, I think it was $150,000 to make, and they definitely spent every single cent of that film. The one thing they didn't spend any of that money on was the editing, because apparently Daniel Strange is the editor. Apparently he hates Caleb Emerson, the director. They hate each other, and they still hate each other, from what I've read. They went to film school together and made a bet that if Caleb got funding for a movie first, Strange had to cut the film free of charge.
Oh.
Had Strange that bet, Emerson would have had to do all the special effects in his movies. I briefly looked up Strange, but I hadn't seen anything he did, so I'm not sure how heavy those effects would have been had Caleb actually had to do it.
Well, they had to have been friends at some point if they were willing to make a bet like that.
Well, the trivia I took that from, I can't remember if I got it from IMDb or Wikipedia or where, it said that they did it to jinx each other's films. Like, the whole thing just screams two guys who, like, got drunk and got mad at each other and just never forgave each other. It's great.
It's a real, like, throwback to, like, VHS horror, shot on video violence, like Mama's Home, Hell Roller, Video Violence, Rot, and Bloodsuckers from Outer Space.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. And there's a lot of trauma in there, too. Mm-hmm. In fact, Lloyd Kaufman does a brief voice cameo in what was it? It was an advertisement for Zombastachine. Some sort of
I have two notes here. One is that I'm somehow not surprised this is Corey's favorite.
This is one of my top 10 favorite movies of all time.
And the other note I have is that it's totally family friendly if you're from a sick and twisted family with absolutely no boundaries.
Oh, it's not so bad. I mean, it's like, okay, yeah, it's pretty bad. But it's all cartoony. Like, the hammer scene, that's pure cartoon.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely had, like, Ed Wood kind of, like, 60s horror flicks kind of bits in there, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially with Amphibious Guy. That was so 60s part. So good.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the editing on this being apparently free of charge. That actually suddenly makes a lot of the scenes that just seem to appear out of nowhere make a lot of sense. Like Nefarious's childhood thrown in for like no good reason.
Yeah, I thought about that too, and I thought about all those random baby sounds that Red makes, and I'm wondering if that was. I contacted this guy on Twitter, Emerson. He hasn't gotten back to me yet, but I'm wondering if maybe the editor pulled some of that stuff just as another jab at him. I'd really like to know if that's the case. So Caleb, if you're listening, or Mr. Emerson, whatever you prefer, get a hold of me at the end of the episodes. I'm going to make you listen to all of it before you can get a hold of me. So I will tell you our Twitter and all that information. Please tweet me back, or just look for me on your Twitter. I'm already there. On a tragic note, and I'm going to go off topic a little bit here. On a tragic note, this was both Hassel Atkins and Jamie Gillis's last film. Hassel dying just over 2 months after the film's release. It was released in February. He died in late April, I believe, of 2005. Jamie Gillis passed away of melanoma in 2010. Yeah, and like I said, I want to go off topic for a second and talk about Hassel Atkins, because he's one of my all-time favorite performers, and his contribution to rockabilly and psychobilly, rock and roll in general, is amazing. He should be up there with Johnny Cash, Elvis Presley, but he's not, just because he's
Brian Setzer, would that be the right name for the other one?
Yeah, Brian Setzer.
Setzer.
He definitely should be on that same pedestal. Hassel Atkins was a rockabilly one-man band. He did all of his recordings himself. He was totally DIY, gave away his music, made very little out of it. He just did it because he loved it. In fact, at one point, they had to have a fundraiser for him because he couldn't afford heating oil for his trailer one winter.
Man.
Yeah, that's how dedicated this guy was to just getting his music out. And without Hassel Atkins, we wouldn't have people like the Cramps. The Cramps, in fact, cover
Yeah, she said.
Yeah, she said. Yeah, Psychobilly wouldn't be what it is without Hassel Atkins. It was one of the first celebrity deaths that really affected me because he's just so amazing. And I encourage everybody listening to go out, find some of his music, ignore the production short companies, and just enjoy the man's raw talent and insanity. Read about him as well. Research him. There's nobody like this guy. Nobody has ever existed like this guy or will exist again. He was a true original. I'm not going to get into it here because I've already gone so far off topic, but research how he died as well. It also, if you read the right stuff, it just shows how amazing of a person he is, even at the end there. Back on topic?
No, yeah, I mean, I'm glad you actually recommended this movie because, yeah, I had never really, I mean, I knew the Cramps song, but I did listen to like other songs from Adkins, and yeah, definitely talented, but definitely had like a really like unusual but interesting life. I'm definitely gonna listen to some more of his music.
Yeah, you should, man. It's crazy, but it's just so pure in what it is, and he's playing every instrument you hear on that most of the time at the same time.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah,
he's amazing.
You know, when I started this movie, the first 2 minutes in, I was like, Corey, you son of a bitch, because I thought I was in for a really, really bad movie. But 10 minutes in, I was glad I stuck it through.
It really is. I mean, it's childish, it's lowbrow, but it's another one of those movies that everybody loved making. I think it took him 3 years to write it, another couple of years to get it filmed, and you can just tell that everybody loved doing their thing in that movie. Movies like that aren't made very often anymore, even though for the last 2 podcasts I've talked about too, with this and Volumes of Blood. That's beside the point.
You know, when I was watching this movie, I thought, if it had been broken down into maybe a YouTube series, it could have been massively popular.
Oh yeah, that would have. Oh yeah, he would have made a shitload of YouTube money had he done that. He's still working. He's still working in film. He's gone to direct 2 more feature-length films. One is called Frankie and Blunderland that I watched the trailer for. I sort of half-watched it. I'm not really sure what it was about, but it definitely seemed strange. He didn't write it, though. He just directed it. He also directed a movie called Allo Denalo, which I can't find anything other than its existence. I can't find a trailer or anything like that. He's done a couple of short stories for anthology movies as well that I haven't seen, and I guess he did a fake trailer for a movie inside of that terrible Scream Queens TV show.
Oh god, I can't watch that.
Yeah, I gave up after season 1, so I didn't see the trailer.
It's not bad, but it's not my style at all.
Yeah, I thought it was bad. I was really hoping for. Well, when I had first heard about it, here we go off topic again. We'll rein it in pretty quickly. I was really hoping for. They were going to get all these final girls in one series and take it seriously, make a movie about Scream Queens dealing with the after effects of the terrors they went through, right, and maybe bring those terrors back as well, so they're all dealing with it together. That to me would have been a hell of a lot more interesting than a bunch of selfish sorority girls being cartoons once a week.
They're trying too hard. They were trying too hard to be funny.
Yeah, for sure. So before I read my last little piece, do you guys have any favorite scenes?
Mine was definitely the police scene, just the police showing up and Red explained that the blood that they see is from a really big spider, and the cops saying peanuts. Yeah, I mean that was definitely. I liked the story about the spider living in the Tower of London, and I guess living there for 100 years and grew to an enormous size. And Tim Gressmar, his delivery and like his dance at the end with like the cops leaving, that right there kind of hooked me as far as like the movie.
Oh, for sure. And David just saved me a bunch of time because my last sentence is actually introducing that clip. But we'll get it.
I'm Officer Konash, and this here is Peanut.
Peanut.
We're investigating some missing persons in the area. Are you familiar with the Maldonado sisters?
Ooh, I know them, but we haven't seen them.
We?
My wife and I. Violet! Say hi, honey!
Come here, I just made the best part.
You see, they were away on a safari. They were supposed to be back a couple of weeks ago. They haven't turned up. Their parents are very concerned. They called us, so we're doing a house-by-house check to see if anyone knows anything.
No, haven't seen them.
Alrighty then, sir. Sorry to bother you. Sir? What's this?
Blood!
I know what it is. What's it from?
Spider!
A spider? Was it a big one?
Wicked! In fact, it is said that in the Tower of London, high in the bell tower, there lived a spider once. For over 100 years. And in time, drinking from the oil lamps, it grew to the size of a man. Can you believe it? It is said that if left unchecked, there is no telling just how long a spider might live, or just how big a spider might grow. Peanut.
Alright then, just please give us a call if you see your neighbors, the Maldonado sisters, at any time.
I'll be sure to do that. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Thank you for your cooperation, sir.
Maddy, what about you?
Oh gosh, I just loved that random element of the end of him having a sidekick. It wasn't really a sidekick.
Yeah, Kid Fantastico's, I didn't touch much on the end because it's so insane, but yeah, Kid Fantastico's appearance is pretty great.
I like the Olaf the nipple destroyer puppet too. Like that was
so ridiculous.
So freaky looking.
Yeah, like the way it moved made me so uncomfortable. Olaf the Demon Man. Yeah, that was. There's also when he visits his dad. There's also a bastardized Motorhead quote that I should have. There are enough clips. You guys can watch it for yourself, listener. Yeah, there's a bastardized Motorhead quote that I thought was pretty funny as well from Ace of Spades.
The whole film followed the heroic cycle to a T.
Joseph Campbell would be proud.
Even though it's not a terribly intellectual film, I can at least appreciate the structure.
Yeah, for sure. And I was going to touch on that, but I had already written so much ridiculousness about it that I just let it go on what I already had written.
Okay.
I just love the idea of like Hassel Atkins being a wise mentor.
Okay, I think I have one more. I have one more note here for you, and it's parentheses a dicks question mark and then a very serious face.
See, I was gonna make it through this whole thing without saying dicks, and you ruined it.
Well, it had to be said. That one part. What the hell?
Part at the end, or the fact that they keep saying rubber dicks randomly. Are you talking about the key in the door towards the end?
I'm talking about their romantic scene in the beginning. Well, it was certainly an eclectic little selection of movies that we picked today.
I love that our tastes are so odd but complementary. We've been killing it with the movies we've been choosing so far.
I think so. I think whereas in the last one I went to the extreme with TerrorVision, as far as like fun effects and practical effects, David went there with Bride of Reanimator. Now, are there any other romantic films that either of y'all have watched before we call it a close for the night?
I watched the 80s heartthrob vehicle Lover.
If I'm possessed.
Possessed.
Whatever. How come this only shows up when I get horny? What's so funny?
If it's horny you feel, you get horny for real. You can't get down with no female when you got a mouthful of razors and a pointed tail. She's done laid a case of Romanian blue balls on you, boy.
I'm not sure how in-depth you want to get on that. I'm sure we're running out of time. But I loved it. I think that 80s heartthrob Scott Valentine is actually a pretty good actor.
Come on.
No, I'm serious. I don't know if my obsession is just getting out of hand or what it is, but I feel like he might have had more work on stage than he did on film, and I think it really showed up in this movie.
With his jazz sax playing?
The jazz sax playing pretty great. Did you catch the Clive Barker reference in that subway scene?
I sasaw the book that the woman was reading on the subway. I think that's why, like I mentioned, it's definitely not like super Clive Barker-y, but as far as like the movie itself, but I did see that, and I was like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, if Clive Barker made a comedy,
Yeah, sure.
He never would, but I feel like this is probably what it would be.
Yeah.
I don't know. There wasn't a lot of male homoerotic stuff in this, and that's kind of an essential element of any Clive Barker story.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And there's a lot of that in Books of Blood too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So I do want to say about this movie that I think it has a really good message about human nature in it. And that message is you can have this thing inside you. You can have this horrible thing inside you, but it doesn't have to be what defines you. It doesn't have to be what takes you over. Like Kaz who is played by 80s heartthrob Scott Valentine. Kaz is a good person with a demon inside of him, and that demon can't change that. It's proven repeatedly throughout the film. He's not the one murdering. He just ends up doing a whole bunch of ridiculous stuff, like putting on the face of the boyfriend who won't leave at one point, and I think putting on the face of Denny's mother.
Kind of like gore moments for the film as well. Like Denny runs in and
too, right?
Yeah, that's a pretty fun sequence.
But yeah, so you've got Kaz, who's generally a good person with this potentially horrible thing inside of him that he manages to keep in check because of his nature. And then on the other hand, you have... I'm going to ruin it because nobody's going to see this movie. So on the other side, you have the nerdy character Charles, who is a terrible person on the inside. And I have kind of a predator written here, but the dude's definitely a predator. Every night he's probably at this bar, just repeatedly, nicely hitting on these girls. It reminds me a lot about the whole Nice Guys.
Yeah, he makes me think of like a straight Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah, exactly. Although Jeffrey Dahmer would have been a lot quieter. He would have sat at the bar until he got drunk enough to get up the courage to approach someone. I think I just ripped that off from the last podcast on the left, guys. Sorry, guys, but thank you for the joke.
This is if Red Pill had power.
That's what it is. The monster inside of him is the Red Pill, and this demon just makes the shitty parts about him even stronger. So in a movie this campy and ridiculous, I thought it was pretty cool that like such a deep message about human nature actually comes out. You know what I mean? Or maybe I just love Scott Valentine so much I want to add a little bit of depth in his films. Scott, if you're listening, please contact me. I'd like to talk to you.
We can resurrect your career, Scott.
Are you just pouring our podcast out for all of the moderately famous people?
Well, yeah, I guess. But it'll work out eventually, trust me. This is going to be good for us. So, where did the castle on the outskirts of New York City come from?
I have no idea.
Maybe it was at a golf course.
Okay, I will take that. That was a golf course. Question 2. Where does the relationship with Sonya and the cop come from? I thought maybe she was a psychic for the cops occasionally, but that's never mentioned. How do you think these two meet? Like, did I miss something?
It was implied at the very beginning that they had been in a relationship. I think the psychic is actually an officer. I don't think being a psychic is her actual career.
No, it's not. She works at that store.
Yeah. No, that's her sister.
Oh, so Sonya's a cop too?
Yeah.
I didn't get that at all. That's what I get for watching it at 4:00 in the morning. After a lot of medicinal whiskey, but that's beside the point. My final question is, so Kaz sleeps with Sonya. Is that considered cheating if he's doing it to achieve demon form to save Denny?
Denny forgave him pretty quickly.
Yeah, but that was after a very terrifying experience.
Well,
like once Scott goes away and it has time to set in what he's done, I think that there's like a post-movie argument about that at least.
I honestly don't think Kaz had complete control over himself when he was possessed. I think it was almost, on Sonya's part, I almost think it was date rape.
Yeah, no, I can see that, because he definitely, when he was possessed, even when he was in human form, he couldn't help what he did sometimes.
Yeah, like when he was trying to be intimate with Denny, you saw what happened. Yeah,
because when he was running around New York City, basically sexually assaulting everyone in his path, that was the demon. I don't want to make excuses for your character, Scott Valentine. That still wasn't cool. I think a little better, but I understand what happened there. So Scott Valentine, I'm glad you're alive. Thank you, sir.
Oh, that'd be sad if our only listener turns out to be Scott Valentine.
Sad? That'd be the best moment of my life.
And on that note, I think it's time to draw the show to a close. You can find us on hallow-holic.blogspot.com or the mirror site, hallow-holic.wordpress.com.
There you go. And you can also tweet us at Hallow-Holics at Nowhere23 on Twitter. And I will respond, because I'm awesome. And eventually there will be a Facebook group for all of us, but I'm waiting for some more pictures and some more episodes, I think.
Yeah, let me know if I can help you out with that.
Oh yeah, dude, I'm gonna put you as the. I'm not really much of a Facebooker. I don't think any of us are. So I think that if we form together, we could make one Facebooker. And
oh my gosh, it'll be like Captain Planet.
Our powers can.
Only the Don Cheadle one from College Humor, where he just turns everybody into trees.
I used to have a joke with a friend of mine that we'd say, with our powers combined, we'd put our hands together, and then we'd turn into John Lovitz and be like, oh. So, for all of you, those lonely listeners out there, or lovers sharing a horrific night with the dead body under your bed, happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day, guys.
Happy VD, everybody.
And it looks like the castle around us is starting to crumble. Someone really should tell this corpse to stop eating her own heart out.